Hello guys, and welcome to another hangout with the International Full Soap Timeline and my creaking table as usual, as ever. Got a lot of ground to cover tonight. Probably won't be able to do this in a single session. If you hear any noise in the background, it's my neighbour playing music quite loud. I'm also starting this, usually I record the small hours, but I'm starting earlier. I'll try to finish it in the small hours of tomorrow morning. Failing that, it will have to go over into the... Well, I'll get it done anyway. So, a lot of ground to cover. I've just been watching a rant, a very mild rant by the excellent Michael Tracy on the odious and now deceased Virginia Giuffre. As the subject of this talk is this hangout, is propaganda, that's as good a place really to start, because there's been so much ludicrous rubbish here. And Tracy has done more work than anyone to dismantle this nonsense. Other people are looking into it too, have been for some time. There's a female journalist, I saw her recently. She attended the Maxwell trial, and like me, she wonders what crime did Maxwell actually commit, what crime she convicted. And there's other people as well. There's Lady Colin Campbell, who at the moment she's laid up. She had an absolutely horrific accident at an hotel in, I think, in London. Really horrific. She was in the King Edward VII Hospital. I dropped in a get well card for her the other week. She's back home now at Castle Goring. She says she won't be able to walk for 6 months. perhaps on crutches, but it's really horrible accident. Get well soon, Lady C. She has done. She's a real royal insider. She knows a lot about what's going on. And for me, I still can't get over the fact that Prince Andrew settled with this chiselling little whore. Tracy's been talking quite a bit about Tara Palmeri. Palmeri was a mainstream journalist. She's accredited. But she's got two problems, two psychological defects. One is Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. The other is she seems to believe everything this chiselling little whore said. She actually went around with her, trying to solicit testimony in a bizarre fashion. Didn't have much luck with that. And I say, she keeps referring to these teenage victims of Epstein in Palm Beach as children, as kids. Well, yeah, but I mean, Epstein was not a paedophile or pedophile in the American language. He was a hebephile or a bebephile, whatever. He didn't have sex with them. He had underage girls giving him massages, which, I mean, what he should have done, he was so wealthy, he could have hired a troop of midgets to dress up as schoolgirls, and really bizarre stuff. And she actually believes that this great... there's no satisfying some people. Trump was hiding everything, now he's released all the papers, and she's going on about his name is being frantically erased from them. The Democrats poured or tried to pull a really horrible stunt. Well, a dirty stunt. They released all these emails that came out. They released an email that said Trump had spent time at Epstein's house with a victim, and they redacted the name, and the so-called victim was Sweet Virginia. And this is apparently she was a Trump supporter. She voted for Trump. Well, she would have voted for Trump. Anyway, she's definitely a Trump supporter politically. Palmeri, I saw, she hasn't lost her critical faculty, only on this subject. I saw her interviewing one of these lunatic Democrats, a woman who'd been at an ICE demonstration, and she laid down in front of a lice vehicle trying to halt deportations of these illegal immigrants, many of whom actually been convicted of serious crimes. And Palmeri, she asked her some hard questions, and the woman left the live stream. It's quite funny, actually. So she can have a critical faculty, but not keeps espousing the propaganda, and the propaganda is outrageous. Tracy has exposed a lot of it, and in due course, I think, well, there's never only satisfying some people. The idea that there is a vast international ring of paedophiles, of the great and the good and the extremely wealthy, isn't so outrageous. I mean, there have been such paedophile rings. There was one exposed in Australia a while back. Some bloke there's a website, a site on the dark web, really horrific stuff. There's a lot of perverts out there, degenerates, but I mean, Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Richard Branson, come on, seriously. That is ongoing. I'm going to look at more generally of propaganda. I don't know if you can hear that. Somebody chucking bottles or whatever outside. There are all manner of organisations out there, lobby groups, rape crisis, women against rape, the sexual grievance industry generally, third wave feminism, organised groups and individuals. Basically, they want any man accused of rape to be convicted. Period. If he's accused, he's guilty. They want to remove all statutes and limitations so that some demented hag can come forward, they don't expression, come forward anytime, like 5, 10, 30 years in the future, and accuse a former schoolmaster or boyfriend of anybody of some manner of sexual abuse, and that guy be convicted and thrown into jail. I've had correspondence with people who've been, one in particular, absolutely horrendous story, and he lost everything. Anyway, that's the outline of what we've got in store, what I've got in store for you. So let's look at, in the first place, I just froze. If you don't recognise that phrase, it was used by Rape Crisis Scotland in, I think they made about 3 videos of it. I just froze. I thought I'd fight back, but I just froze. It's a propaganda, as I say. The idea is that women don't fight back because they just freeze when they're attacked, when they're raped, and so they won't fight back. They won't get bruised or anything. And then 3 months afterwards, they'll finally have the courage to come forward and disclose to a police officer or someone, disclose the fact that they've been raped. Now, do people freeze? Yeah, I mean, there's such a thing as stage fright. You know, some people get stage fright. Kate Bush, very talented artist, one of my contemporaries, and a woman I used to really fancy when I was younger. She had stage fright. That's why she didn't. She did perform a bit, but she was afraid to go on stage. Yeah, people do freeze. if you have like a disaster, an earthquake or something, there's something called disaster shock. You have people walk around like zombies. But do the vast majority of women freeze when they're attacked by sexual predators? No. I'm going to play a short video now. This isn't a sex case. This is an attack on a 12-year-old girl in Derby. Not a sex case. Could have been just as bad or even worse. Anyway, I'll play it and then we'll discuss it. Right, as you can see, that brave lad attacked a 12-year-old girl to steal her phone. And she fought like a tigress. Now, if that were your daughter, you'd say, it's only a phone, let it go. A man will do that to a 12-year-old. We could have smashed her head in on the concrete. Absolutely outrageous. But you'll find lots of cases like that, of even quite younger girls being groped, grabbed or attacked by sexual predators, or just predators, and they fight back. So if a 12-year-old girl can defend her phone, then why can't a fully grown woman defend her honour? So this is, I say, the propaganda of Rape Crisis Scotland and others. Incidentally, that guy was convicted and he was given a sentence, but he should have got a lot more, in my humble opinion. When I say he was given a sentence, I mean a custodial sentence. He got 3 years. He was a 22-year-old drug addict named Patrick Gunnar, and the girl gave a victim impact statement in which she said she was afraid to go out in case something like that happened again. So that somebody would get her. They would get her. The proverbial they. That's understandable. That's post-traumatic stress disorder. But leaving that aside, she fought back, you know, and girls do fight back. Kids fight back. Quite young kids fight back. So don't believe any of this garbage about rape crisis, what they say about how women just freeze, and this garbage about the amygdala, and just don't believe it, you know. If anything else, adrenaline, think adrenaline. So that's that one. Now let's move on to something related. Recently, the British government, if you can call it that, came up with a suggestion that jury trials should be abolished for less serious crimes. This is because of a backlog. One of the people who suggested that, the main speaker, was the imbecile David Lammy, and that guy really is an imbecile. Yeah, a few years ago, he defended jury trials. He was claimed that BAME defendants, black and ethnic minorities, were fared better with jury trials than with judges. I don't know if that's true, but somebody dug out a recording of him speaking in favour of keeping jury trials. Rape Crisis Scotland, this is a particularly odious organisation run by an odious woman, Sandy Brindley. This is reading from their blog. This was April 27th, 2023. Why we support single judge trials. The Scottish Government's recent Victims, Witnesses and Justice Reform Scotland Bill includes plans for a pilot of single judge trials. We're supportive of these plans and believe they could have real benefits for survivors, accusers, survivors engaging with the justice system. That's why we support the pilot scheme and how we think it could help survivors. Single judge trials are trials where cases are heard and decided upon by one judge, just in case you're in any doubt. Why do we support single judge trials? In Scotland, conviction rates for rape are the lowest of any crime type. For cases that reach trial, the conviction rate is around 51% compared to 91% for all other crimes. And jurors can be influenced by rape myths. Rape myths. Every time you hear that phrase, what it means is believe women. Professor Fiona Laverick analysed international research on rape myths and jury decision making and found overwhelming evidence that rape myths impact these decisions. Rape myths, believe women, believe women. There's a link to an article here, an abstract of an article by Fiona Laverick. This paper presents overwhelming evidence that prejudicial and false beliefs held by jurors about rape believe women, And they mention a rape myth scale here. It was actually a rape myth scale. It's the Illinois rape myth scale. Ludicrous. Survivors often tell us that going to court is as traumatic as their experience of sexual violence. Really? This just isn't acceptable. It just isn't true either. Some survivors described feeling watched by the jury, feeling everything had to be a performance for them. Well, yeah, but doesn't the defendant feel that way? If he takes the stand and if he doesn't take the stand, My opinion, my belief is that in the absence of exceptional circumstances, an innocent man should always take the stand in any trial. The Lady Dorian Review discussed several benefits that could result from single judge trials. More convictions, improved complainant experience, yet in Scotland they're called complainers, not victims. Reducing the impact of rape myths, believe women. More focused questioning, the provision of a written verdict and saving court time and expense. A written verdict could be a very positive development for complainers. The judge will be required to give reasons for a decision. Some survivors describe the lack of any explanation for a jury's decision as distressing because it means they are never able to understand what happened. Ditto defendants. Is Scotland the only country to do this? No, sadly. No, trial by jury is far less common in Europe. In the Netherlands, trials only use professional judges. The French government has announced that they will remove juries from most rape trials. Canada is arguably, I've said this before, the worst country in the world in which to be falsely accused of rape or any sexual crime. What about the right to a fair trial? Already we've heard some misleading rhetoric on this plan that does not reflect what is being proposed. No, it's just unbelievable, these women. They also want to get rid of the not proven verdict, which is unique to Scotland. I don't see why. Well, I do see why, actually. But these women are basically they're total cunts. On your screen, you will see a social media message. Merseyside Police. Freezing is a common trauma response. This shows you how far this nonsense has gone. It wasn't and isn't just Rape Crisis Scotland. This is certainly the whole Western world. It says here, sexual assault isn't a misunderstanding, it's a crime. Yes, but what is often alluded to as sexual assault, certainly on a campus, isn't sexual assault. It's a misunderstanding. I'm going to play now another clip. This is somewhat longer. This is nearly 3.5 minutes. It's from a much longer video. This is by Matt Walsh. This is a campus case. He was accused of rape and he was acquitted. Listen carefully to what Walsh says about what is in effect the brainwashing of young women with all this garbage about consent, affirmative consent, enthusiastic consent. Listen to it and then I'll discuss it.
Now, feminists don't allow for gray areas in these situations, but I think that's where the truth often falls with this sort of thing. So imagine that Oakman and the woman go back to his apartment, both intending on sexual relations. Then let's say the woman at some point realizes that she isn't into it, doesn't really want to do it. Let's say that Oakman then tries to convince her, pressures her a little bit, not physically, but just not with threats or anything like that, but just tries to convince her to do what he wants to do. And then let's say that she agrees of her own free will. She's not prevented from leaving. She could leave, but she agrees after some convincing, and she goes through with the act, even though she didn't really want to. She wasn't that into it. Now, the left tells us that that would be rape. If there is no continuous and enthusiastic, and they put that in the def, it has to be enthusiastic, continuous, enthusiastic, affirmative consent all the way through. In the absence of that, it's rape, they say. But that's absurd, of course. It's not rape. That wouldn't be rape. It wouldn't be good either. But the left has created a dynamic. This is the dynamic they've created. They say all sex falls into two categories. There's only two categories of sex. There's good, wonderful sex, and then there's rape. Nothing in between. If it's not good and wonderful, it's rape. That's what they say. Those are the only categories. But in reality, there's a lot of room in between. It is possible to have bad, immoral sexual relations, the kind that may leave a person feeling used, dirty, guilty, whatever, but which was entirely consensual and thus not rape. Those kinds of sexual relations happen all the time, especially on college campuses, and I think that's why we hear about 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted. Well, some of those women counted in that statistic really were sexually assaulted, but I think a lot of them, what actually happened is they consensually had sex that they didn't really want to have, but they did it anyway. By expanding the definition of rape to include cases where there was actually consent by both parties, the left has diminished the severity of rape and created a whole mess of false rape claims that the person making the false rape claim might not even know is false. So back to my hypothetical, it's perfectly possible, even plausible, that the woman went through with the act completely consensually, but she wasn't that into it, and she later realizes, based on what we're told these days, she later realizes that, oh, I was raped. And she comes to believe that she really was raped, and then she maybe embellishes the story a little bit when she talks to the cops and she tells people about it. She embellishes a little bit just because she knows that if she tells the story exactly as it happened, it won't sound like rape. And maybe that's why she goes back and she deletes the text message and she does all this stuff. She really believes that something did, that she was assaulted, but she knows that if the exact sequence of events wouldn't support that claim, so she changes a little bit.
Right, first, my apologies for the poor quality of the video. Not my fault to come out from YouTube like that. That case isn't on the timeline. I might put it on there. Probably will actually. It's really so many cases like that. That video was uploaded to YouTube on March the 7th, 2019, and has been viewed less than 1,300 times. That's a channel that has well over 3 million subscribers. So as usual, the truth is nowhere near as popular as the fiction, as Virginia Giuffre proves. There have been so many of these cases. I've actually had contact with two two victims of false allegations of campus rape. One was quite outrageous. She solicited false evidence from another dude. He eventually was cleared because she was seriously not right in the head. And the other was a guy who asked me to redact his name. I did. His name was still out there, but not on my website. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is something that's been going on since at least the 80s. The 1970s was second wave feminism. You had the odious Catherine McKinnon, who, to her, pornography was rape, you know? Not just prostitution, but pornography, any sort of sex, really. And she was a really horrible woman. The claim in one of her books, one of her mentions, is that if you look at consensual sex and rape, the only difference is that the former appears to be more frequent. And toxic bitches like that have done so much damage to innocent men and women as well, because it isn't good that women believe they've been raped when they haven't been. So that's something that's still going on, and the sisterhood is never satisfied. Never satisfied. They keep churning out these false statistics. False narratives. Please excuse the yawning. It's later. It's after midnight now, and the guy downstairs is still. They're still having a party or something. So that's what Matt Walsh thinks of this. I agree with that wholeheartedly, 100%. And I've seen many cases like that in a database of women who rewrite sordid but consensual sexual encounters in their tiny minds as rape. Here is an article from a magazine called Grazia, a women's magazine. This is from March 2022. Why do only 1% of rape reports result in a conviction? Plain statistics again. Documentary maker Rebecca Cotson, herself a survivor. Yes. Spent 18 months embedded with the police to investigate. Here she shares what she learned. And it says here, by Grazia contributor, I presume that's what she's telling her story to someone. Sex that is not consensual is called rape. Yet the word rape seems to hold an unfair stigma. For a crime that is as common as being mugged or having your bike stolen. No. Rape is widely considered the second most serious crime after murder. I would disagree with that. I'll put a link below to my short video, 2 thought experiments concerning rape. Yet it's 100 times more likely to happen to you. In England and Wales, there are 600 homicides per year compared to more than 60,000 rapes. Again, this is absolutely ludicrous. They pluck these figures out of thin air. They extrapolate. When you take a look at these figures, and a lot of them are not rape, they're the bad sex, unpleasant sex, and a lot of them are purportedly delayed reports. What happens, has happened quite a lot, is a woman will see, she'll be watching a soap opera or some series with a storyline of child sexual abuse or rape. And she'll phone him lots. This is a well documented phenomenon that when it's something high profile like that, rape crisis centres are deluged with allegations, and women have flashbacks. I think they have flashbacks. No, A lot of this is due to, it's a combination, well, it's confabulation, it's due to alcohol, prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, recreational drugs, and the passage of time. Paul Gambaccini put it best. I was at a meeting in Central London Law Society, and he said, this is a classic line, he said that tonight 300 girls across this country will go to sleep dreaming of Harry Styles. 20 or 30 years from now, 2 or 3 of those dreams will have morphed into something far more sinister, maybe 20 or 30, maybe a lot more than that. When I was 24 years old, I was raped by someone I met on a dating app. I made it clear that I didn't want to have sex, but he forced me to anyway. Despite him biting my lip so hard that it bruised for days afterwards, when I realised what was happening, I did not fight or scream. I froze! I just froze! So, where were you? Where were you when this happened? In bed? Seriously? I did not report the incident to the police. I didn't even tell my friends or family. I was embarrassed and confused by the whole ordeal. A few months later, it came out as a match again on the same dating app. In all honesty, it never crossed my mind to report the incident to the police. Well, if that really did happen, you are complicit in the rape of the next woman he targeted, but I don't believe it. 57% of people who report rape withdraw before the criminal case concludes. Why is that, do you think? No, this is all propaganda. It appears that juries are too often not getting a chance to hear cases and decide verdicts because the evidential standard required to get to trial seems to be so subjective. Tell that to Rolf Harris. Tell it to David Lee Travis. Tell it to the other victims of the Operation U-Tree witch hunt. Absolutely ridiculous. Many rapes take place behind closed doors with no witnesses. You think? There's a quote here from Vera Bad, horrible woman. Yeah. The way to stop this, without sounding like a victim blaming, is for women to take reasonable precautions. She meets a guy on a dating app. Well, no, I don't go along with that. And that is where Grazia stops. Here's another piece from that magazine. This one is classic. This is from November 25th this year. Again, please excuse the table. Help us close the repeat victim legal loophole that harms abuse victims. By Georgia Aspinall. Survivors of sexual abuse are being penalised for having made previous reports of sexual violence. We're campaigning to change the law to stop that. In other words, serial false rape accusers. When Penelope, asterisk, i.e. not her real name, reported her abusive ex-partner to the police for rape and coercive control, she thought the worst of her experience was over. It was in fact yet to come, she says. When Penelope finally got her day in court, she was subjected to 4.5 hours of brutal cross-examination, during which I was interrogated about previous experiences of sexual abuse I endured as a child. Oh my God, just unbelievable. And he was convicted of this. Yeah. 31% of survivors of child sexual abuse victimised again later in life. Really? Really? According to research by International Labour Organisation, more than half of women say they face sexual harassment and or violence 3 or more times at work. Define sexual harassment. At a time when women are being encouraged to report every instance of male violence, from catcalling to rape, how are we meant to feel safe doing so if it could be used against us later down the line? More to the point, how men expect to be safe. I mean, all this garbage. And goes on here. They were attempting to explain why my case had been dropped Anna went to the police after being subjected to indecent exposure by a stranger. In her victim impact statement, she wrote that she was particularly affected by it because she experienced sexual offending in the past. She was raped several times by a friend years earlier and reported it. Everyone needs a friend like that. No charges were filed as police did not believe there was a realistic chance of conviction. They didn't believe her. Several times. She hated it so much she kept going back for more. Ludicrous. The fact that Anna had made a previous report was considered bad character. Bad character evidence, indicating that she's a person who may make false allegations. Yes. And these are related stories. CPS to train staff to recognise spectrum of abuse of women. Yeah, sure. There you go. And it goes on. CPS implying they are doing me a favour by not exposing me to cross-examination on my previous sexual violence allegations. That has stuck the knife in even further. I have never once been unsure if I wanted to carry on with my case. And this is a woman called Chantel. Chantel, she's also a repeat victim and been in more than one abusive relationship. She's currently seeking justice against an ex-partner, terrified that her previous experience will be used against her. Chantel's first experience of rape was at university in 2005. There we go. University. That case was dropped because Chantel had been drunk during the offence. So she was considered an unreliable witness. Yeah. Drunken consent is still consent. Then in 2017, she reported an abusive partner for rape, assault and coercive control. After charges were initially dropped, she appealed with the help of the Centre for Women's Justice. Oh my God. And her abuser was eventually jailed in 2021 for sexually motivated actual bodily harm. The Centre for Women's Justice. I mean, I'll put a link to that. Is two women, Harriet Wistrick and her lover, Julie Bindle, who literally helped women get away with murder. Literally. They've helped a number of women get away with murder. Starting with Emma Humphries. Absolutely outrageous. I don't know how valuable that case is, but as I said before, stay away from abused women, so-called abused women. They're toxic. Don't white knight for them. You'll be the next one to be accused of abuse. It's happened to so many police officers. They get involved with these women in investigation. They get pally with them. May not even have a sexual relationship, but they end up getting reported and losing their jobs. Absolutely outrageous. Now Grazia is working with the End Violence Against Women alongside Rape Crisis England and Wales. Harriet Wistrick and her lover, Im Khan, and Rights of Women to call for a ban on this practice. Previous incidents of sexual abuse should never be used against victims. Well, if they're false, currently that ban could come in the form of an amendment to the Victims and Courts Bill, which Baroness Aisha Hazarika has agreed to table as it is going through the House of Lords. I mean, so what about the accused previous convictions? Yeah? If you've got any. This thing is just pure propaganda. Now, I'm not saying women don't get abused. Of course they do. But the best research, Bettina Wright has done a lot of work on this. The best research shows that much, if not most, so-called interpersonal violence is two-way. And very often it's women who start it. I could add a lot more to this, but you should get the point by now. You can't believe anything Rape Crisis, Women Against Rape, any feminist organisation says about rape. You can't believe it uncritically. You have to do your own research, and when you do that, you find most of it is just nonsense. Most rapes, most genuine rapes, end in a conviction. Now, I'm not saying that men don't get away with it. Some do. But by the same token, a lot of these, I mean, women they're literally being encouraged to make false allegations. And a false allegation can destroy a man's life like that. So, anyway, please visit the False Rape timeline. You'll find lots of cases like this. If you're a dude, stay away from so-called abused women. And if you're a woman, do what Camille Parlier said. That is, if a man invites you to his place and you go, that just the two of you, make it clear, signal that you don't want sex. That's if you don't want sex. It's probably best not to go with men you don't like. I don't like these dating app things. There've been so many cases of men as well. I mean, Stephen Port, homosexual rapist. Well, I don't know if he raped, but he certainly murdered 4 young homosexuals. I would say steer clear of them. You know, don't go with, don't mess with people you don't know, and don't go with people you don't know, at least not recklessly. Anyway, so one more time, please visit the False Rape timeline. I haven't added that many cases recently. I've quite a few to add. I've also got some more hangouts lined up. I'm going to do a second edition of Dark Blue Yonder fairly soon. I was going to do it this month actually. Dark Blue Yonder is really insane false rape allegations. There's a load of those in the database. Okay, so that was hangout number, was it 127? Propaganda for proper geese. Don't be one.